Everybody, welcome to the conversation about sci-fi and horror film shorts. We are so excited to have two of the filmmakers with us who are part of that block. We just had an incredible conversation with Foley and Neil and Leah, and we'll continue that conversation with you. And I think that what we're going to do first is just to have each one of them introduce themselves, the film they're attached to, and talk a little bit about the film and a little bit about being involved in the film. And then we'll have a little bit more of a discussion about all sorts of things about their films. So let's start with Neil.
Yeah, my name is Neil Stevens. I was born in Lynn, Massachusetts, so not far from Roxbury. But I live in Los Angeles now. I'm a writer-director of mostly horror movies. And yeah, I made, wrote and directed Face Your Fears.
Great. And Leah, you're part of Face Your Fears.
I am a part of Face Your Fears. My name's Leah Briese. I played the lead actress, Elisa, in Face Your Fears. And it was a great story to be a part of. It had me take a look at some of my fears that I live with on a daily basis and choose not to face. But this one was really, really a fun experience working with Neil. He's a really talented director and writer.
Excellent. And Foley, tell us about your film.
Hi guys, my name is Foley Ellis Ibidapo. I am based in Boston, Massachusetts, writer-director. Lucy is it's a science fiction story that's just, or should I say, it's a healing story wrapped in science fiction. And, you know, and that's ultimately what it's about, and shown through a little deaf girl named Lucy.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because all of your films were so, well, first of all, Face Your Fears, like I have the fear of the dark, so I'm not going to face my fears with a box. I'll just tell you that right now. But I mean, I think it's really important to think about how we use horror and how we use sci-fi to sort of tell these really important stories. So can we talk about what, like, those decisions to use these particular genres to talk about, like, the issues around facing your fears, and even, you know, with Lucy around, you know, her special needs? So Foley, why don't you start?
Sure. Well, with Lucy, I didn't intend to tell a story about an individual with special needs. I didn't want to look at people coming at from a deficit. You know, it's just part of life. And the funny story is Lucy, the main character, wasn't supposed to be deaf. We had the B character was supposed to be mute, and the young lady who auditioned, she was Lucy. So I changed the script based off of the young girl who auditioned.
Perfect.
And so,
wow.
So like she was Lucy, and I was like, no, this young lady needs to be her. And so ultimately, again, this really is a story about, like, my own healing journey, and just learning how to ultimately forgive yourself for things that you may have done, or might do, you know, you know, and you know, that's kind of the essence of the story, but try to add that thriller aspect to it, and ultimately the science fiction world building, and well, lack thereof, actually, because there's many questions, but there's world building behind it.
I mean, that's really incredible when you think about that, when you talk about your healing journey and really wanting to put that forward. And I'm wondering, Neil, if there was, and as far as Leah goes too, is this, you know, just the name of the film, Face Your Fears, it's like we all need to do that, right? And that's sort of the same thing. It's sort of like a healing journey to do that. And I don't want to do a spoiler alert if people haven't seen it, but, you know, the consequences of not doing that. So like Foley, was the film created in a sense to do that, to help heal, a healing sort of sense, or that a message that we need to do this?
I think for me, and probably similar to Foley, it's like I'm not setting out to do this specific thing, but it ends up like everything I do is a healing. It's like it's a healing thing. Like, I mean,
Right.
especially, you know, we already talked a little bit beforehand about like the craziness of the world is like, when I'm writing something, it's like I have all these things just built up and all these anxieties and all these fears, and horror and sci-fi are great genres for kind of being able to let that out in an entertaining way that isn't going to necessarily alienate the audience because we're creating this separate world or we're creating this fantastical thing. But for Face Your Fears specifically, I think probably the healing thing was I had a real fear of the dark when I was younger.
Yeah, obviously.
Growing up in Massachusetts, we had this really scary basement, and I think my aunt said that she's probably just trying to scare me, but she's like, oh, somebody committed suicide down there
Oh my God.
100 years ago or whatever.
That's so mean.
I remember recording. She's a lot. She was just trying to melt. You know, it's like a Boston way of screwing with people, like as we do. But I was afraid to go down there. But all the games were down there. So in order to play, you know, the games like Candyland or Monopoly or whatever, you had to go down into the basement and into the dark. So you know, maybe it's a way of sort of a childhood exercising a childhood fear that.
Yeah. And Leah, how was that? How was that playing that lead character?
Well,
and facing your own fears.
So, you know, as an actor, I'm going to piggyback off of what Neil said. As an actor, when you're really diving into a role and really diving into the story of whatever character you're playing, you really embrace what they're going through. And it makes you call into question different things that you've dealt with in your life or different fears that you might have in your life. I'm not per se afraid of the dark, but I'm definitely afraid of snakes. And like, that's just a thing for me. I have panic attacks if I see a snake. I can't look at them in magazines. It's just a thing, you know? And I didn't necessarily face that fear. However, and I have no plan on doing that anytime soon. I just, and especially I wouldn't, if there's a box with a snake in it, I'm not inside. It's just not something I'm going to mess with.
Yeah.
But as an actor, as an actor, you definitely dive into various fears that you experience in your life to just make the story real for yourself. And it just calls into question things that, you know, that you've dealt with in your life, and it just brings it to the forefront. So I definitely say there's definitely part of that.
Yeah. I mean, that's the one thing about that film, about Face Your Fears. And we were talking about this before that, yeah, it definitely makes you think about, it makes you think about your fears, but it also makes you think of, you know, when watching that, you're like, why would she open that box?
Yeah.
We don't, like, as Black people, and that's why Get Out and Us and all these other like horror type of films, you're like, oh my God, I'm not going to do that. I'm like, you know, but I mean, I do think it says a lot about that we do need to do that, right? That we do to sort of face those fears. And you know, I'm interested to Foley for you, for your aspect of working, you know, within the genre of sci-fi. And they're not necessarily like this connected thing, but it's still this sort of way to look at situations sort of outside of the current reality, right? So how important is that for when we're looking at, you know, and we're even when you're looking at something like a Black Panther or whatever, that you're creating these worlds that we can have these conversations, and people, like you said, you cast her because you thought she was perfect, but that this sci-fi world, and maybe even this horror world, that people can be things that they may not be able to be, or looked at in a different way in our current world. Can you just talk about that? I don't know if that's clear, but
well, I think what I hear, it's projecting what you want to see in the world.
Yeah.
And for me, that is, I think, what I am destined to do. You know, I think as a half Nigerian, half Jamaican, you know, American, it's, you know, I kind of see the world from this kind of in-betweener space, you know, and seeing how African Americans kind of view the world, seeing how Nigerians view the world, seeing how Jamaicans view, and then kind of coalescing that together as far as the African diaspora, and seeing like we need to see things other than pain, you know, and see something of a future that is bright and shiny, and that can be. And I think part of my job is as a writer is to, and director, is to create worlds that help be the change for future generations. And I really try to take that seriously. And with Lucy specifically, I'm working on a series right now. And, you know, it's been 3 months now, and yeah, whatever. But you know, part of that is like, oh, we're gonna blow this shit out. You know, we're blowing this shit out. So, you know, that's kind of my goal, and what I.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it's sort of like transforming the way that people see people of color in general. I mean, I'm thinking of like Raising Dion, right, in the future, and looking at a series like Raising Dion that does that, and it sort of like looks at Black life and kids in an entirely different way, and sci-fi can do that, and sci-fi can definitely bring you to those spaces where there's an equity in those particular worlds that don't necessarily exist in the world today.
Right.
Yeah. And so, go ahead.
Oh, as an example, if you think about, you know, Black Panther, we have Akon creating Akon City, right? And he's like, oh, I need $6 billion in investments, and we're going to create our own Wakanda. Wakanda, like, that movie was 2 years ago. He's getting $6 billion to help create a city, you know, like a futuristic city. So just that kernel, you know, it's important. Right.
And it's important for it's important for us to see those stories, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it's also important for us to see the stories, you know, that Neil and Leah have created. Those stories of fear, the things that scare us, and the things that scare us that we can overcome.
Right.
And so, I know. All right. Well, you overcome them in some sense. All right.
I won't say.
Neil and Leah, talk about that.
I won't say.
We're supposed to overcome them. We're supposed to overcome those fears and not, you know. Actually, I don't want to, because I don't know if everyone's seen the end of the movie, but I mean that was an interesting choice, Neil.
Yes. Yes.
Talk on that, Neil.
I'm so sorry, audience. I grew up watching like The Twilight Zone and Tales from the Crypt, and like it would never end well for these characters. And I'm sorry, Leah. But that's
sorry, Leah.
It's perfectly fine. But you know, the thing is I feel like it's American storytelling always has this happy ending, but globally, storytelling like in France or Korea, it's not, or South Korea, it's not necessarily, things don't always end up with a happy ending. And I think maybe that's the American paradigm, that we want to see, or we want to be hopeful. You know, we have, our country was built on this idea of this American dream, you know, and so we want to see this positive ending, which is something that's really thread itself into the storytelling of our country, which is really interesting. But it doesn't necessarily always end up that way, which is the truth in life as we're seeing right now. You know, it's not always, life is challenging and people don't always have happy endings. But I personally feel as though sometimes the hardest times in my life is when I've learned the most. So in that regard, it definitely is a happy ending. If you walk away from maybe a negative experience and you gain a lot from it, as far as your personal growth and development.
Well, you know, it's funny that you say that, because as I was watching it, I was like, you know, she didn't complete the thing. Like, of course she's going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
So like I took away from that, like, oh my gosh, like if you had completed what you were supposed to do, then all would have been right with the world. So my message from that was like, make sure that you complete all the things you're supposed to complete?
That's a really, really good point. I mean, if I look at the list of things that I've started, and I'm not proud of it, but things that I've started that I haven't finished in my lifetime, it's a long list, and I'm not proud of that, but I think it's something that you come to a point in your life when you're like, you have to complete these things. So yeah,
Right.
It's a good point.
So like, that's my takeaway. I don't know what you all wanted us all to take away from your films. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that. So because I think that's important. You made films. You were passionate about the films you made. You wanted us all to walk away from these films with something. What is that you wanted us to walk away from? I mean, I feel like I walked away with some really great stuff, but I'm curious. So Foley, why don't we start with you? Like, what was it that you wanted us to walk away from?
I wanted you to walk away with a feeling of, I love Steven Spielberg movies and Robert Zemeckis films, and I like really happy stuff. And I wanted you to kind of leave feeling like, oh my God, like she's powerful. You know what I mean? Like I want to see more. And I feel like I executed on that, but that's ultimately it, a feeling.
Great. And Neil?
Yeah, I guess to piggyback on that, my first number one goal always is to tell an entertaining and emotional story. It's never, I never start from a place of I'm gonna teach people this, or I'm gonna, I want the world to know this or that. I mean, not anything wrong with that or anything. Just the way I try to approach a story is, all right, what is the interesting, emotional, entertaining thing? And then if I can find that, somehow usually the theme will make its way out. And this isn't a movie necessarily with, I'm writing some other stuff right now that have some more clear sort of thematic things that are actually happening in the world right now. But this one was kind of just have fun, have it be entertaining. And if there is a lesson, it's that there isn't a shortcut to overcoming major obstacles in your life. Like you live in a world of instant gratification, and spelled out in 140 character tweets. And what I've learned in life is that anything good, anything worthwhile takes a long time. And this is sort of a microcosm of that you got to go all the way in. You got to go all the way through, and where there's a point of no return, you can't come back. We're so afraid of jumping into things, I think, in fear of rejection, or fear of failure. But, if you go into the other side, I found the most amazing things happen when you go past that point of no return, without hurting yourself. Nobody hurt yourself out there, but do it safely. Incredible things happen on the other side of fear.
Yeah. That's good.
Wow.
But
Foley, clearly have a comment on that.
I'll let the audience watch. It's just
Incredible
a big
things happen on the other side of fear.
Well, she, there were specific instructions. There were specific instructions, and I don't remember like a bottle opener being part of the game. Or like whatever. Like, like you do it or you don't, and I already said it's not the happy ending, but.
All I know is I thoroughly enjoyed the film, and like the pacing was really good. It's really, really good, and I felt the tension, and for the mere fact that there was barely any dialogue too, so that was dope.
Yeah, which is total kudos to Leah for bringing us through that film with very little dialogue and feeling that tension and that and it can be translated to every day, like feeling that tension.
Oh, for
So,
sure.
so what's next for you guys? I mean, Lucy feels like it should be a series. You could do a whole feature film on Face Your Fears, I guess, or a series of those. So what's next after this festival circuit, and you do all of the virtual festivals that you can, because we're all virtual for the next 18 months. What are you working on? Are you moving these forward? What's going on?
Neil.
Okay. I'm working on actually kind of both things you mentioned. I have an anthology series that I'm writing based on just different, like I mentioned, things that are happening in the world. And I'm also writing I guess a spiritual feature film for Face Your Fears. It's a different game, and it deals more with grief and loss and the opioid addiction. I mean, I grew up, as I said, I grew up in Lynn, and obviously in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New England, there's a horrible. I mean, it's spread all across the country now, but
right.
It's really affected us, and it's affected me. Fortunately, I've never been an addict, but I know people who have. I'm very close to people who have. So that's dealing with that. There's almost like no solution to it. It's
right.
such a difficult thing, and so as a healing thing for me, is I'm trying to explore that in a feature film of how to deal with that, but hopefully in a fun, entertaining way. Like you mentioned, Get Out. I mean, Get Out is a fun, entertaining movie about something utterly like horrific when you think
right.
about what is actually happening is utterly horrific.
Slavery and I mean all sorts of Jim Crow.
It's so much fun and it's entertaining and it's open, and it's open to anyone to enjoy it. And I love that. I love being able to do those two things, being entertaining and fun, and also deal with something like real that is like a real problem. To be able to do those two things that's my goal anyway. So we'll see what happens with those.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important that you are both able to take these real life issues and sort of put them in a different genre, so that they're. Oftentimes people say, like with sci-fi and horror, that it becomes a little bit more palatable, and that people can, people have the opportunity to not in a documentary setting, but to really actually be able to watch the whole thing and actually and then spend some time thinking about what it is you were saying, right? So, which isn't easy, and I know it's not easy, and I know horror is not easy, I know sci-fi is not easy, and trying to get those stories across the way. We applaud you for that work that you're doing. So that would be very interesting, and we would love, to be supportive in bringing that forward for you. And Foley, what about you after you threw it to Neil?
Yeah, it's actually it's been a good year. Lucy has opened up some doors,
nice,
along with another project, and I recently got hip pocketed at CAA, and so
nice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
So pitching Lucy as a show.
Nice.
A couple of companies, and pitching a dramedy that I wrote, and hopefully trying to get a job in 2 weeks. We'll find out. Writing a pilot, but I'm just working.
So you're doing nothing.
That's not true. He's being creative, and he's creating like his new world, and he's a working writer.
There's a lot of procrastination. It's as you know, Neil, it's like the worst. I mean, I haven't written in 2 weeks at all. It's just. Neil, you already know. So it's kind of like, I'm excited, but we're staying on the positive because I like positive.
And we're rooting for you, Foley.
Appreciate it.
Honestly, like having to be creative and write during this time is not easy. And I can't imagine how difficult it has been for writers and creators in a time where like the world feels like it's falling apart, right?
Yeah.
So we hear you, and and we're here, to help out in that in any way, shape, or form. So so we get that. So we're gonna look forward to the Lucy, the series, most definitely.
It's
And
actually
so
called Il Efe now.
what?
It's called Il Efe.
Ilefe.
Il Efe. It's Yoruba land. I'm focusing significantly on people of Yoruba land because most of the Black diasporas are Yoruba for the most part.
Right. That's very true.
And kind of similar to Neil, it's well, you're doing an anthology, but this one's kind of world building and focusing on the Yoruba pantheon, kind of similar to like Nordic and Greek. So we're using that, like Children of Blood and Bone meets Stranger Things type thing,
Wow. Wow.
So that's kind of like the direction.
That's dope.
So before I get to you, Leah, there's a question about, as a filmmaker, if you could toss one superpower into your script, what would you choose and why? And what new dimension of narrative do these things give the writer? It's funny. Someone said that to me, like, if you were a superpower, what superpower would you be? And I was like, oh my God.
Like us individually?
Allison said that she would be smart, but she's already smart. Like Suri. Oh, like Suri. Yeah. I would clone myself. So what would you do? If you were going to throw a superpower?
If we had a suit, or if their characters
Yeah, so it says, the cliche question is, if you could have one superpower, which one? And as a filmmaker, if you could toss one superpower into your script, and Leah, this is good for you too. Like if you face your fears, like what superpower would you throw into your script and why?
I'll jump in on this. And I don't even know if this is necessarily a superpower, but maybe it is because, it has to do with just the digital aspect of intelligence. I've been listening to an interview, I think it was with the New York Times. It's a podcast called Sway, and it was with Elon Musk, and he talks about such interesting stuff. And I don't know if you're familiar, but he has this new company where they're creating chips to put into people's brains to help them learn how to walk, or if they can no longer walk, it'll help them walk again and stuff like that. And so this is the preliminary phase of this chip. And so, but moving on maybe 30 years, 20 years, I don't know what his timeline is from today, the chip is meant to help people just become superhuman, crazy intelligent. And he was talking about how, so if you have your phone, you can type your phone, maybe like, you could type a text message, maybe one word, one digit per second or something like that. And he was just mentioning how slow that is compared to an operating system and how fast they operate. And so it basically, if I were to translate this into a superpower, it would be like hyper speed. So not just hyper speed, but not hyper physical speed, but also mental speed. So overall hyper speed, to where you can, at a hyper, speed, you can process information and move and all that. I just think that would be really interesting.
Wow. I need that now.
Me too.
Hyper speed my brain.
Espresso enough. I need that hyper speed chip.
Me too. I mean, sounds great. Give it to me. Give it to me.
I feel like some people already have that. Anyway, so Foley, what about you? If you were going to throw a superpower into your film, well, I mean another one. So.
It would be telekinesis, telepathy, and precognition.
Neil,
you really want to know what people are like thinking in their head?
Oh yeah, I could rule the world.
I don't want to know. I don't want to know what's going on in other people's heads. I like the fact that it's like leave it in your head. I don't want to know what's going on.
It's true, but then you can get the Magneto hat.
Magneto hat. I want to know the
Yeah.
future so I can do future, so I can do insider trading. Oh wait, did I say that? We're recorded.
Okay, Martha.
Yeah, this might be used against you.
I know.
All right, unfortunately we're gonna have to wrap this up. But
Oh,
I
This
know
was fun.
we could talk forever. All right, so let's just do sort of it's going up on YouTube. So so let's just say all right, so how should we wrap this up? Let's just ask you questions about, we've already said what are your next projects? Although Foley didn't answer that question, did he? No, he did.
No, he did.
He did answer that question.
Yeah.
I don't think I answered.
Yes, you didn't. Leah didn't answer, what's next for you? Because
Well, I just wrapped a film. I can't say the name of it yet because it hasn't
everybody says
been
that.
released just yet. I've signed an NDA, but the cool thing is I can say the network. It's gonna be on the Oprah Winfrey Network, so I'm really excited about that.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, congrats. So will
Thank
you
you.
let us know
I will.
once it gets, so we can help promote it. So we want to
Yes,
make sure that we're
absolutely.
promoting it.
Foley
All right.
can telekinesis and tell us the name.
I should know that because I want the superpower of futuristic understanding. All right, you guys, this has been great. I have so enjoyed this conversation, and so is Allison, even though she's sitting next to me. So we look forward. We look forward to all your next projects. We're going to be watching you. We want you to tell us what you're up to. We want you back at RoxFilm. You guys are incredible filmmakers, and Leah as well. We're going to watch your career, and just thank you
Thank
so
you
much
so much.
for being with us. We really appreciate it, and good luck with all the work that you're doing.
Thank
Pleasure
you.
meeting
Thank
everybody.
you. Such a
Pleasure
pleasure.
meeting you.